Listen, y'all been in my inbox asking when I'm coming back? Well, guess what? I'm back. Landlord and Tenant Talk Uncensored is now live every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, as well as TikTok. So grab your pencil, your paper, and your sippy cup, because I'm spilling the tea and nothing is off limits. We're talking about security deposits, inspections, housing programs, bad tenants, slum landlords, late rent, and yeah, we're talking about retaliation. We're also talking about how to fix it all without losing your mind. I'm calling it like it is. No fluff, no fake advice, just the truth landlords and tenants need to hear. So whether you own the building or you pay to stay in it, this weekly live is for you. Hello, everybody. Happy Marvelous Monday. Happy Monday. I hope that you all are well. I'm super excited that you are joining me live today. Thank you for those of you who are watching the replay. Welcome to the Landlord and Tenant Talk Uncensored. This is a weekly live show where I dive into the raw, the real, and sometimes the messy world of rental housing. I'm Karissa Spann, your no-filter guide to navigating the landlord and tenant dynamic, whether you're renting out properties or renting one yourself. Every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here. You can find me on this platform. I'm live on YouTube. I'm live on Facebook. And I'm also live on TikTok. I tackle a new topic each week with straight up facts, practical tips, and unapologetic takes. So there will be no sugarcoating here. There will be no fluff. So tonight's session is all about when landlords go broke chasing fairness. Listen, I'm breaking down why being too nice, like waiving late fees, freezing rent, or falling for sometimes the sob story, can drain every landlord's bank account. I'm also going to share why tenants need to respect boundaries to avoid drama. So just expect rock solid boundaries, rock solid advice. So whether you're a landlord protecting your investment or a tenant navigating the system, this show is going to give you that actionable advice that you need. So I'm going to give you real talk, real tips. It's going to be some hard hitting strategies today for landlords, but I do that because I want to make sure that as many people as possible, I can help to stay profitable. And tenants, I want to make sure that you can stay smart. I want you to also think about screening hacks, some things that you could consider a must have as it pertains to that rental lease agreement, and then also how to avoid those eviction traps. All right. So I'm going to open it up with some questions towards the end. But if you have comments, just throw it in the comment section, because your comments, your conversation, well, your comments help to shape this conversation. Also, in this segment, I'm going to provide some truth or trash. So I'm going to throw out some spicy statements and just get your feedback, right? So that's what this segment is all about. So why watch? I know some people who may be tuned in for the first time, maybe you've never heard me before. Listen, this is not one of those boring real estate seminars. This is high energy, uncensored, deep dive information into the housing game. It's packed with controversy. It's going to be packed with a little laughs, but always packed with facts. Sometimes these are facts that you won't hear from corporate gurus. And I just want to let you know that if you're ever burned by a bad tenant, by a landlord, or maybe you're just your own nice guy instincts, right? You have those instincts. This show is for you. So make sure that you stay to the end. I'm going to provide my contact information so that you can reach out to me. Also, I just want you to know that information that I'm sharing is not legal advice. However, it is the industry's best tips, best practices. So I'm going to get right into it because I have a lot to share today. And again, if you have any questions, any comments, remarks, or observations, please, by all means, throw it in the comment section so that I can respond to you accordingly. And if you are tuned in for the first time, just show me some love. Drop it in the comment section. Let me know this is your first time tuning in. I want to make sure that I am acknowledging you. And if you find it helpful, please, by all means, please like, please tag, please share this segment with someone else that it may benefit them. Doesn't matter if they're a landlord or a tenant. All right, so today we're talking about when landlords go broke. Shape for those who are new landlords. Sometimes there are discrepancies with what you see and hear from larger rental housing providers or larger companies. Um, Now, one of the things that I always like to tell people is this: just depending on where that rental property is, the laws are going to be very different. So, from one state, from one jurisdiction to the next, the laws may be similar, they may be the same, but you always want to know and understand what the laws are in the jurisdiction that you live or you're managing or own that rental property. And I do like to put that disclaimer out there because I know that I have a lot of colleagues who have rental property in different states, such as myself. I have um, different categories of tenants because I have property in one state, I have property in another state. And it's so important to always know what the laws are. So I do like to start out with that, especially for those who are just getting into the management space. You're just getting into maybe real estate investing, right? Maybe this is your first trip, in the rodeo. So I want you to know and understand that. So I try to give generic, general information. But if you would like for me to go just a little bit deeper in terms of the laws in your specific area or your state, let me know in the comment section. I'm also going to give you my email address. That way, if you ever want to reach me when I'm not live or online, you can always reach out to me and I will respond to you. For those of you who have tuned in over the weeks, the months, and the years, you know that on the YouTube channel, I always give feedback. So feel free to drop your comments or your questions so that I could address that. So now that I have that in the way, let me get straight into the segment for today because I promise that this session here is it's going to get a little spicy. It's going to hit home for some, and it may leave some others scratching their head. But at the end of the day, it's all going to make sense. All right, so let me get straight into it. All right, I see your comment coming in. Good evening. Good evening. How are you, Christina? Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so we're talking about when landlords go broke chasing fairness. All right, so let me just get straight into it because I have a lot to cover on today. Now, before I do that, let me just also say this that with this segment today, um, I want you to know and understand that whether you're just getting started in property management as a property manager, a leasing agent, you are looking to become an investor or just an owner in the real estate space. I want you to keep these things in mind. I recognize that some people are further along in the industry. You've been in the game for a while. Some are just starting out. So I'm going to give information. And if it does not apply to you today, just hold on to it, pack it in your briefcase, just write down some notes because I promise at some point in your career or on this journey, something that I share today may be applicable for you at a later date. All right, so I am going to share tips for landlords. I'm going to share tips for tenants. I'm going to pull that up on the screen on today. So again, we're talking about when landlords go broke, chasing fairness. Now, this is not a segment that's going to go too deep into fair housing laws, right? That's not what this segment is about. I will I will say that fair housing laws are in place, and the fair housing laws did come about in 1968, but that's not what this segment is about today. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. But if you do have questions pertaining to the fair housing laws, then by all means, let me know so that I can answer your questions. All right, so let me bring up, um, you know what, let me get into, I think I'm going to start with tips first. That's a good place to start. And then I'm going to come back to truth or trash. So if you tune in every week, you already know I'm going to give some truth, I'm going to give some trash, but I want your feedback on that. So stick around for that. So when it comes to fairness in the rental housing space, I'm definitely going to discuss some scenarios, but the focus, I want us to focus today on why chasing fairness, like being too lenient, can bankrupt landlords, while setting firm boundaries protects your investment. So here it is. The tips that I'm going to include today is for both sides. And I do that because I want to always spark a balanced discussion. It's not all for landlords, but it's not all for tenants. So remember, this is uncensored. So we're calling out the hard truths. All right. So for my landlords, let me start with you first. So let me give landlord tips before I go another further. For those of you who are property owners, your landlords, when it comes to screening your tenants, one of the things that I always like to say is to screen like your life depends on it, because it does. Don't let sympathy cloud your judgment doing screening. Christina, I know that you are in the space in your business where you help owners and landlords understand the laws, right? If a tenant story tugs at your heartstring, I get it. That's just a part of human nature. That's what we do, right? But if their credit screams risk, I recommend that you pass. I mean, because once they're in, I mean, you can't really undo what you've already done, which is why screening is so important. Screening is like dating a person. You want to get to know who they are. And when they are in, make it a habit to enforce those late fees from day one. Because if you waive them just for one time, this is now training the tenants to push past the boundaries, which could lead to chronic non payment. And when that happens, that cash flow is going to dry up. So you want to set the standard up front. You want to also document everything, no exceptions, no excuses. I know that some people believe in verbal agreements or understandings, and that's cool, but I'm big on documentation, because at the end of the day, I think we all can agree that documentation beats conversation any day, right? And so if you have it in writing, make sure that you keep a record of it, because that's going to be your fast track in the event that you do have to go to court. You want to make sure that you are using an ironclad lease, because that is going to be your biggest protection. True story, when I first got into property management, and I've been in this space for over 20 years, I was representing a client who had self managed, and they had never issued a lease that was more than 2 pages long. And so that left them and their rental property unprotected. I recall them taking a tenant to court, and I felt really bad because it was an older couple, well in their 70s and 80s, and they were doing the best that they could. But times had changed from when they first got into the space. So they went to the court, they got a court date, they went before the judge, and the tenant knew the law better than they did. And although the tenant was wrong, the tenant should have been evicted, but because it was not in writing, their case was dismissed. They were heartbroken and they came to me asking, well, what could we do? Well, I mean, you didn't do the right thing by protecting your business. You didn't have a lease that protected you and that rental property. So if the case is dismissed by the court, it's nothing that I can say or do, right? So you want to document everything and make sure that you keep those records. Is I always say this is it's always better to have it and not need it versus needing it and not having it. Now, fairness isn't about bending rules. Let me just make that clear. But it is the consistency that keeps you and your rental property business solid. So there are a lot of pitfalls that people end up in because they make these common mistakes. Here's another thing. I'm talking about landlord tips. You want to make sure that you are charging market rate rent. Ignore the sob stories. It is a business. Many of you know, I've said it before. If you treat your business like a business, it's going to pay you like a business, right? But if you treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby. So you always want to make sure that you're charging the right rent amount, right? If you're going to give a rent increase, make sure that it's fair, right? You want to raise the rent to match inflation or the market. And if you can, you should definitely do it. Now, I know that some of you do not. I have friends who do not raise the rent. They have had tenants in their rental property for years, some 10, some 15, some 20 years. They have never raised the rent. Okay. Tenants, sometimes they're pleading poverty, might guilt trip you into freezing so that you don't increase the rent. But you have to overcome that. Because when it comes to boundaries, boundaries mean that you are treating this as a business and not a charity. If you're struggling with pricing, listen, reach out to me. Schedule one of my consulting sessions that can help you audit your portfolio so that you can max out your return on your investment. Here's another tip for landlords: outsource emotionally draining tasks. For instance, if handling evictions or disputes yourself is a big issue, if you know that you are always compelled to sympathy and that draws you in, my recommendation to you would be to hire a property manager or an attorney who can enforce the rules of that rental property, right? Because although it does require upfront costs, it can save you from the fairness traps that you can sometimes find yourself in. Um, and especially when it comes to those unpaid bills piling up. Now, I do want to say that when it comes to building relationships, and this is my fifth tip for landlords on today, when it comes to building relationships, you want to build reserves first, right? You want to prioritize that emergency fund over being a nice landlord. And I'm doing an air quote that you obviously can't see, but tenants who see you as a friend, they will exploit that. They will have requests for repairs that they're responsible for paying. They'll ask for extensions over and over. They'll ask for discounts. That sympathy can drain your wallet if you're not careful. So it's always better to have a reserve so that if there's ever a storm, a financial storm that comes up, you can weather it without going broke. Now, I'm going to tell you that it's important to do that because I see your comment, Christina, and I'm going to come right to you. It's important to do that because in situations where, let's say, you have a capital improvement repair, so you have an apartment building and the roof needs to be replaced. If you don't have something in reserve, that property is going to suffer if you cannot afford to get that repair completed. There's nothing worse than having a roof leak. And the roof leak, let's say the roof leak has been going on for years, like 10, 15 years. No exaggeration. This does happen. This has happened to someone that I know, a dear friend of mine. They did the best that they could. They were not in the property management space, but they own rental property. And the property manager that was responsible for overseeing that property had never worked in the industry before. So a lot of things had fallen to the wayside. had slipped through the cracks, and it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that property in code compliance. That roof had leaked for so long, um, from the top floor down. This was a 3-level building. It was a senior community. The roof had leaked for so long that there was water damage on every floor down to the basement. All right, so Christina, let me come back to your comment, and then I'm gonna go to tips for tenants. All right, here's your comment. You said there's a landlord that I'm assisting right now, and when we went to court, the language in the lease, first the lease was one page, red flag, and the proper notification to the tenant of how the landlord will communicate with the tenant and how the tenant will communicate with the landlord was not properly written in the lease. So the landlord was emailing and texting the tenant, but not placing notices on the door. But that language was not in the lease. So the tenant was able to tell the judge that okay, that's where your comment in. If you can finish that, Christina, I want to know what happened with the court. And I'm glad that you brought this up because I need people to understand how important it is to put everything in writing, not some things, but put everything in writing. And this is a clear case here. So, Christina, I know where you're going with this, but if you can put the rest of your statement up, I want to bring it up on the screen so that people can see what actually happens when it's not in writing. All right, so I'm going to pause here, and then I'm going to give some tips for tenants. So, Christine, if you can put the rest of your comment up for me, let me pull that up on the screen. Now, listen, everybody, that's why it's so important to put everything in writing, because if it's not in writing and you have to go to court, you go before the judge, that judge may dismiss the case because you don't have your ducks lined up in a row. It's important to make sure that you understand. And I know that sometimes people will say, well, Karissa, I don't feel like I need to do all of that. Listen, it's a business. Don't get caught on how you feel. You want to get caught on the facts. The facts are what they are. Documentation beats conversation every day. So put it in writing. All right. So, Christina, if you're still here, put that up on a screen for me here, and I will definitely share it. I am now going to, so while I'm waiting for Christina, let me go to tips for tenants because I don't want tenants to think that landlords are always right or that they have to live in a rental property that's not conducive for them. So, as a tenant, you do have rights. All right. So, here are my tips for tenants. Now, the first thing that I will always say is this: respect boundaries so that you can avoid eviction or drama. Because landlords, and don't take this the wrong way, and if you do, that's fine. Landlords are not your therapist. Landlords, they're not the bank, right? They have bills to pay just like everybody else. All landlords are not rich. They don't sit around on millions of dollars. Some may, but not all. So pay your rent on time. But if you can't, communicate early. But when you communicate, do it with proof, not excuses, because chasing fairness by guilting them into being lenient, I promise you, if they're knowledgeable, if they're tuned into me, if they're one of my clients, it will backfire. And this is one of the things that builds resentment um, faster than anything else. The second tip for tenants on today is I want you to always read the lease like your life depends on it. Why? Because it does. When you sign that lease, that is a legally binding document. Don't sign something and then cry unfair when the rules bite you, because sometimes I know you're dead set or you're hard pressed to move into a rental property. You don't read the lease before you sign it. You guys got to stop doing that. You sign a lease, and then when it's time to go to court, you say, oh, well, that's not fair. Landlord should not have said that. They should not have put that in writing. Well, listen, if you didn't agree with it up front, then don't sign it. Understand the fees, understand those maintenance responsibilities, understand the renewal terms up front. And what a lot of tenants don't recognize is this: you can negotiate before you moving in, before you move into that rental property, not after. Don't wait until you move in and say, oh, well, I know that the rent is supposed to be 1,500, but can you only charge me 1,200? No, negotiate before you move in, because some owners and property managers will do that. But you have not, because you ask not. All right, so here's another tip for tenants. I see your comment. Thank you so much. You want to budget for reality, not just some sort of idea. Now, another thing I want you to know, we're in 2025. Things are changing drastically for owners of these rental properties. As a tenant, I want you to expect a rent hike, because here's the thing: housing isn't a right, it's a market. And a lot of things are changing for a lot of owners. So if sympathy please worked before, I promise you, uh, landlords would you'll be surprised to know. Let me say this: you'll be surprised to know how many landlords have gone bankrupt because they have allowed tenants to pull on their heartstrings. A lot of landlords have gone bankrupt. Many do, but I want you as a tenant to build your own buffer instead of relying on others. So if you know that the rental property you're moving in, be it a house, apartment, whatever, doesn't matter, just make sure that you are budgeting in a realistic way where you can afford to pay your rent. And how do you know if you can do that? Here's a rule of thumb: make sure that the rent is no more than 30 to 40% of your income. I have had tenants or prospective tenants who wanted to rent property and they were on a fixed income. For instance, they had Social Security. So one elderly lady, bless her heart, I felt so bad for her. Her husband passed away and she had to downsize. Her income was not enough for her to be able to afford that rent, right? So her income was $1,200. Fixed income, $1,200. The rent was 15, like 1575 or something like that. I would have done a great disservice if I allowed her to move into that rental property, because it more than exceeded what she could afford. I would never allow anybody. That's just me personally, but everybody don't operate like that. And so as a tenant, make sure that the rent is not more than 30 to 40% of your income. Because if there's ever an emergency, you want to make sure that you have a roof over your head without feeling like you're broke. That can lead to depression and things of that sort. So make sure that you are budgeting for reality. Here's another tip for tenants on today. My fourth tip for you as a tenant: you want to report issues professionally, not emotionally. I'm going to say that again. Report issues professionally, not emotionally. Listen, if you have issues with repairs, maintenance requests, they are legit, but document it and request it formally. Don't get into your feelings. Don't threaten that you're going to do something to the landlord or you're going to have somebody do something to the landlord. Don't call them out their name. None of that works in your favor. I promise it doesn't. Dramatic stories, I mean, they might get short-term wins, but eventually it destroys trust. It leads to stricter enforcement somewhere down the line. Now, I'm going to tell you this: when it comes to rental property, pipes will break. Things will happen beyond an owner's control. Yes, it may be uncomfortable to have to experience that in your rental property, in your rental home, your rental apartment, but ultimately, things will happen whether you're renting or whether you own the property. Things will happen. Something will break, something will break down, something will fall apart, something will back up, something will stop up. It is inevitable. It's just going to happen, right? But when it happens, present it to your property manager or the owner in a way that you get their attention without the dramatic stories, and you can get the repairs completed. Here's another tip for you as a tenant, know when to walk away. If a landlord boundaries are too rigid, they're too strict, and they just don't agree with you, you're just not in alignment with that lease agreement, walk away. It is okay. I promise that you can find another place to live. But forcing fairness through complaints or withholding rent, that often leads to legal issues. And who wants to go through that? I mean, some people do. Some people just wake up on the wrong side of the bed every day. I get it. But that's just something that I would recommend all tenants to not do. All right. So let me go on because I do have some information that I want to share. And when it comes to um, when it comes to these type of issues, I want you to know that as a tenant, again, you do have rights. So don't feel like, like I said, that the landlord is always right and you're always wrong or you don't have a voice. That is so far from the truth. All right, so now let me go to my truth or trash. And I think I want to start here because I want your feedback. I want your feedback. I'm gonna bring up some concerns. Now, this is some feedback that I got from some tenants and a couple of landlords. So here's the first truth or trash. If you agree with this statement here, drop in the comment section truth. If you don't agree with it, type trash. Is this truth or trash? Evicting over a single late payment is heartless. Give the tenants a chance. Do you think that statement is truth or do you think that statement is trash? Let me know in the comment section. Even if you're watching a replay, let me know what your thoughts are. Is it truth or is it trash? All right. I see your comment on TikTok. Thank you so much. YouTube, Facebook. What you say? Do you think this statement is truth or trash? Evicting a tenant over a single late payment is heartless. Landlord should give them a chance. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Right on the TikTok channel, I see your comment. You said this is truth. I see another comment. Someone says it's trash. Now, I believe that it could be either or. It could be heartless. It could be truth. It could be trash. Okay, so let me go to my next one here. So we're talking about truth or trash. Good tenants deserve rent for discounts. For their loyalty, it's only fair. Do you think that's truth or do you think that's trash? Let me know in the comment section. Good tenants deserve rent discounts for their loyalty. It's only fair. You said that's trash. Okay. All right. So now I would say this, and it's all about perspective. Now, good tenants, do they deserve rent discounts for their loyalty? Perhaps they don't deserve it, but owners who do give discounts for loyal tenants, they usually have greater success. They have longer tenancy out of those good tenants. All right, here's another truth or trash. And then we're wrapping up. Fairness means treating every tenant the same and you have no favorites. I'm going to repeat it. Fairness means treating every tenant the same, no favorites. Do you think this is truth or do you think this is trash? All right. You said that's true. I agree. I will say that you always want to treat all tenants the same. Even now, some let me say this, that some landlords, some owners will have tenants that are maybe their favorite, and it's okay, but you still always want to make sure that you treat all tenants the same way. Because if not, then you can cross the line and come off as if it's some sort of discrimination. So, for instance, if you allow one person to, let's say, for instance, you've implemented in your apartment community, you've implemented, let's say, a sign. I'm sorry, you have a parking policy in place, and you're issuing stickers to all the tenants, but the requirement is that all tenants must have the vehicle registered to that rental property where they live on the premises. And you have some tenants who have out of state tags, like Virginia tags or Maryland tags. Let's say this is a DC property, and then you have some tenants who have Virginia tags or out of state tags, and then they also have a sticker or a parking pass. Treat everybody the same, because that could open you up for a lawsuit, um, if you're forcing everybody to be in compliance, but then you let a few of your favorite tenants go. All right, so here's another and my final truth or trash. Landlords should absorb repair costs quietly to keep the peace. So, this is a truth or trash. If you agree with it, in the comment section, type truth. If you disagree, type trash. Landlords should absorb repair costs quietly to keep the peace. All right. Now, some of these statements, some of this feedback I get from tenants and landlords. So it's always interesting. I put it out there before the show. Hey, here's the subject of the show today. Give me your truth or trash, your questions or your comment, and I'll share it. So this did come from a tenant. If you agree with this statement, in the comment section, type truth. If you disagree, type trash. Okay, I see your comment on TikTok. Thank you so much. Landlords should absorb repair costs quietly to keep the peace. You said trash. Okay, you said trash also. Yeah, I think that's trash. Now, landlords, if they are operating their business like a business, then they are not just going to absorb the repair costs just to keep the peace, because ultimately it is a business. Now, for those landlords who can do it, and I do have some friends who do it, they will pay all the maintenance. They'll pay for the tenant damage. They'll pay for the holes in the wall. They will do that because they want to keep the peace. They don't want to get into a disagreement with their tenants. And so that's just something that they do. I think that's trash, but that's just me. And I'm gonna call it like it is. All right. So today we were talking about why landlords go broke, chasing fairness. And these are just some of the reasons why landlords go broke, because they don't treat their business like a business, right? They treat it like a hobby. Um, and unfortunately, if you treat it like a hobby, it is going to pay you like a hobby. All right, so that's a wrap on today's segment. When landlords go broke, chasing fairness. The key takeaway today is listen, is very clear. Boundaries beat sympathy every time, because otherwise your mortgage won't get definitely won't get paid, right? So thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for liking it. Thank you for sharing. And then also, if you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please find me on YouTube at Landlord Lyfe. You can find me here every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here. I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, and I'm also on TikTok. I do appreciate you um, for showing up. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your feedback. I hope that today's segment was helpful to somebody. Remember the tips that I shared for landlords. Remember the tips that I shared for tenants as well. And if you came in a little bit late, I will repeat the tips. So the tips that I shared for landlords is very simple. Screen those tenants. Screen them ruthlessly. Act swiftly. Um, you want to document everything with no exceptions. Charge the market rate and ignore sob stories. I also told you how important it is to outsource those emotionally draining tasks, like handling evictions or disputes yourself. And then I also told you as a landlord to build reserve, not relationships. Yes, you do want to have quality landlord and tenant relationships, but build those reserves first so that you have emergency funds. Tips I shared for tenants was very simple: respect boundaries so that you can avoid that eviction drama, because landlords, they're not therapists, they're not your bank, right? I shared how important it is to read the lease like your life depends on it. Why? Because it actually does. That lease is a legally binding document. And after you move in, don't cry foul or unfair when the rules bite you. I told you as a tenant to budget for reality, right? Making sure that you can afford wherever it is you live. I talked about how important it is to report those issues professionally and not emotionally. And then I also told you how important it is to know when to walk away. If the rules are too tight, if if you're not in alignment with the landlord, just walk away. Know when to walk away. All right, so that's it. My time is up, and I absolutely thank you for yours. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure that you join me each and every Monday right here, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with me. I'm Karissa Spann, the landlord and tenant expert. And if you came in a little late, please go back and watch it from the beginning, watch the replay, drop in the comment section that this is a replay. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday, 7:30 p.m. right here.